For the past 20 years and has personally been involved with over 50 suicides as a first responder. Dr. Hudnall was invited to testify before the United States Surgeon General on suicide in Utah and also participated in a national webinar on suicide. He was invited by a White House representative to present in Washington, D.C. on the Circles for Hope community mental health model at the Dialogue on Behavioral Health and Community Resilience in LDS Communities. He is the founder of Hope4Utah, a nonprofit grassroots organization dedicated to suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. Hope4Utah has provided suicide prevention training to over 41,000 Utah residents. Dr. Hudnall is responsible for the development of the school-based peer program, Hope Squads, that has been responsible for saving numerous lives. He is considered as one of Utah's leading experts in community and school-based suicide prevention and postvention. Please welcome to the stage my hero, Dr. Greg Hudnall.
There's the hero. Give him another hand. That's Collin. I tend to walk as I present, so I'm hoping that as we have this discussion, that'll be a chance to really learn about suicide and the challenges that we're up against. Unfortunately, as was mentioned, we're number 5 in the nation for suicide. The youngest suicide I worked with, a 4th grader, took his life on campus. A year and a half ago in the state of Utah, we lost 2 5th graders to suicide. On any given night in the state of Utah, 23, 24 hospitals. On any given night, 4 to 5 young people in the emergency room who's attempted suicide. Why do you think suicide is so high in the northwestern states? What do you think? Okay, class, this is where I ask the question.
Depression.
Say it again.
Depression. Depress.
Say it again.
Depression.
Depression? Yeah, depression. We know that most young people that take their lives are dealing with some sort of depression. What else do you think? Say it real loud.
Social pressure.
Social, thank you. Yeah, keep interpreting, man. Social pressure, yeah. Especially we, and in this state, and unfortunately some of the other states feel like they have to be perfect, right? Which brings up the topic of religion. Wherever I go, I get a chance. People always say, well, those states have high morals, so it's got to be the LDS Church. Here's what the research shows. Religion is actually a resiliency factor. It doesn't matter what church you belong to because of the connectedness and the support that way. Other ideas, please. You got to shout it out.
Shame culture.
Yeah, thank you. Shame culture. We tend, with that perfected attitude, we feel like if you're not perfect, then you're not living up to the standards, and then we do a lot of shaming, whether it's pornography, whether it's, whatever it is, LGBTQ, other things in our society, right? Well, let me share a couple of ideas, and then we're going to move on. Number 1, altitude. Dr. Perry Renshaw, who is actually at Harvard, he's now at the University of Utah, he's one of our mental health advisors, talks about 18 to 22% of the population is affected by altitude. Fascinating research. Second item is rurality. We were invited to spend a week with the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, and one of the things they talk about is the ruralness. The more rural you are, rural area, it's my Midwestern accent, rural area, the more you're out in the wilderness or in the desert, right? I grew up outside of Nauvoo, so I'm not used to this here, although I've been here 37 years. So the more rural, these guys are mocking me up here. Please. So the more you are alone from other people because of the lack of connectedness. And then the last item is Native Americans and LGBTQ young people are the ones that attempt suicide the most. And we have a high landmass of reservations, Ute Reservation, Navajo, and other things. And then the final one, we don't know. We get to interview a lot of people that have attempted suicide, but it's very difficult to deal with those that have taken their lives. So, as mentioned earlier, number 1 cause of death for ages 10 to 17. If you were to go back 20 years ago, it was accidents, diseases, and other things. Now, unfortunately, suicide has become the number 1 option. So, my story, and this introduces Hope4Utah and Hope Squad. I'm embarrassed to say, but for 10 to 12 years in Provo School District, we averaged 1 to 2 suicides a year. And we did nothing about it as a school system because we felt it was the mental health issue, it was the community, it was the churches, it's not the school's issue. In fact, I can remember one time sitting with with all of our administrators during the summertime, and one of the junior high principals looked at me and he said, "So is it your turn for suicide next year?" I mean, that's literally how we talked about it. We had become so desensitized. As a high school principal, I spoke at 4 funerals, lost 5 kids, spoke at 4 of them. And then in 1997, I was contacted by the Provo police to come down and identify the body of a 14-year-old who had taken his life in the public park next to my school. By far one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. When we got done, we actually had to move the body. When I got done, I walked to my car and I literally threw up and sobbed. This was an amazing young man who came from an amazing family. I was not aware of any warning signs, risk factors. Later on, I found out that he had been struggling and I wasn't aware of it. I remember sitting in that car thinking, enough is enough. We have to do something as a community. These are amazing young people. So the next year I was promoted to the district office, and I laugh because I have some dear friends that are here from the district office. When you're at the schools, you hate the district office. Let's just be honest, right? When you're at the district office, you hate the state office. And when you're at the state office, you hate the feds. So the question is, who do the feds hate? All of us. Everyone in this room. Right? So I got to the district office, reached out to about 10 or 12 agencies. Wasatch Mental Health, who is here, by the way, having a wonderful booth set up. If you have any questions, please go out and talk to them. Wasatch Mental Health, Intermountain Healthcare, Brigham Young University, Provo Police, Provo Fire, we all came together. And it was fascinating because everybody was on board. And Orem, can I tell you, that's what you need to do, and this is a great fresh start. You have the mayor here, you have the police chief, the fire chief, you have multiple people here that are willing to commit, and that's really what it takes. So this is the model we created. We call it the Circles for Hope.
We are living in a time when suicide is a chronic and an escalating concern. Recent studies have revealed that not only has suicide become one of the leading causes of injury death in America, but also one of the leading causes of death for people between the ages of 15 and 49, surpassing even cancer. Can most suicides be prevented? The answer is yes. Individuals who are contemplating suicide frequently give warning signs of their distress. Circles for Hope uses a comprehensive, holistic, and grassroots approach to community suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. An African proverb says, "It takes an entire village to raise a child." Hope for Utah believes it takes an entire community to save them. Circles for Hope builds community connections by training adults to take an active role in suicide prevention. Community trainings are provided to understand warning signs and who is at risk, how to intervene, and where to go for help. Circles for Hope also creates essential partnerships with the local mental health agency, as irreplaceable resources are provided throughout the community. They are a critical part of the community crisis team, as people from all agencies work together and share information for the public good. Circles for Hope offers school programs and training for staff in suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. Successful suicide prevention begins with education, and prevention is where the greatest energy should be focused. The goal is to train all school personnel to recognize warning signs, identify someone who needs help, where to access the help, and when to notify family. The schools also implement a peer-to-peer Hope Squad program, where students are nominated to become trained in suicide prevention. The impact of suicide is far-reaching and affects entire communities. When communities, mental health organizations, and schools work together to prevent suicide, the entire community is strengthened. Working together, there's hope that suicide can be prevented. For more information on suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention, visit Hope4Utah.com.
Here's one of the things that we started to do in our community, and it's what we're asking to do in this community. First thing is common language, warning signs, risk factors. We want every single person in this room to understand what those are. Second part is once I understand what the common risk factors are, protective factors, and warning signs, is the common understanding, how do I intervene? We are afraid to talk about suicide. We think that if we talk about it, it's going to give someone the idea. Where the reality, the young people out there have already thought about it if they're struggling. It's in their music, it's in their videos, it's in their common language, and it's what they talk about when they struggle. And then the third part, which is the most important, is the common knowledge of where to go for help. So we started training everybody, not only the Provo School District, but faith-based. We're out many Sundays doing training, partnering with businesses, communities. We've trained over 800 scout leaders. Our goal is to have every single person understand what the risk factors are, and when I recognize that person struggling, how to talk to them, but then most important, where do I go for help? What are the resources that are available in our community? So we put this program together, started to have some success, but the piece that we were missing was Hope Squads. 4 out of 5 young people who take their lives by suicide will tell a friend, and the friend will never tell an adult. A young man, freshman in Provo High School, came to school, took his watch off, gave it to his best friend. He said, I'm not going to need this after tomorrow. And his friend said, ooh, your father gave that to you for Christmas. He said, I know. My family's going to be better off without me. He then went on to tell 5 other friends that he was going to take his life, and not one of those friends told an adult. See, we've created this generation of young people who think they have to protect each other from us adults. Right or wrong, good or bad, that's what they do. They don't want their friend mad at them, and they don't want to get their friend in trouble. And unfortunately, too many times, that young person will attempt, or that young person will take their life. So we went into Timpview High School, 2,100 students. Timpview High School was our school that was having the most struggles, most threats, most attempts, and most suicides at the time. We went through every English class and we asked every student, if you were struggling emotionally and needed to talk to someone, list the names of 3 of your peers. And the most amazing thing happened. The same 40 names rose to the top out of 2,100. We pulled those 40 young people out, started training them on those 3 circles. It was so successful, we put it in every school in Provo. 13 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 3 high schools. Here's the Hope Squad.
Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among youth between ages 10 to 19 years old. 4,600 youth are lost to suicide each year. However, most suicides are preventable. Youth who are contemplating suicide frequently give warning signs of their distress. 7 out of 10 will tell a friend or give a warning sign that they are struggling, but many of their friends do not tell an adult. A Hope Squad is a group of students nominated by their peers as good listeners and caring fellow students. They work closely with the local mental health agency. Hope Squad students are taught by the school counselor and advisors on how to recognize suicide warning signs in their peers and provide support. Hope Squad members are trained on how to talk to a fellow struggling student. If the peer needs help, they listen and then try to convince them to go see an adult in the school. If that does not work, they inform a school counselor about their concerns about their peers, so the advisors can contact the student and the parents for additional help and support. Hope Squad members also bring suicide prevention awareness to the entire school by holding an annual Hope Week, where fellow peers are given information about suicide prevention. For more information, please visit www.hope4utah.com.
So 1999, 2004, we had the community piece, but you could see we were still having suicides. 10 years before that, we averaged 1 to 2 a year. Look what happened when we built the community piece and then added the Hope Squad. Went 9 years without a suicide. Hospitalized close to 100 kids. And it was because everybody was on deck. The leaders, church leaders of all the different faith-based groups, our mayor, our city council, our police chief, our fire chief, all of the educators, Boy Scout leaders, you name it. Everybody was on board trying to watch out and do everything they could to identify those young people struggling. Here's 3 current Hope Squad members talking. Kathy, are you back there? I'm going to skip this just because I know we're limited on time. Basics of suicide prevention. I want to share some of the things because I see my favorite two people taking notes right here, so I want to make sure you get something to take home, all right? So, basics of suicide 101. Suicide most often occurs when the stressors exceed the ability of that individual to cope. When stressors exceed the ability of that individual, and it's usually someone suffering from some sort of depression. Most common condition with suicide, some sort of depression that they're dealing with. Conditions like depression, anxiety, substance problems, especially when unaddressed, increase those risks for suicides. I hear a lot from individuals, they're just doing it for attention. Adults, when they take their lives, go on lockdown, pull themselves away from everybody, will spend up to a year thinking about or planning on how to take their life. My wife is a therapist with the VA, specializes in post-traumatic stress disorder. Young people will be struggling, something will happen, but most of their suicides occur within a 24 to 48 hours. Romantic breakup, disciplinary action, something that's happened in their life. I oversee a crisis team like Collin talked about. A year and a half ago, we were down in southern Utah. Beautiful young lady. The night before, her boyfriend broke up with her. She came to school the next day, put all of her journals in his locker, went upstairs and took her life. It was literally that fast. That's why the Hope Squad is so valuable, because they become the eyes and ears of the school. The teenage brain, adolescent time of profound brain growth, right? Greatest changes to the brain are responsible for impulse control, decision-making, planning, organization, and emotional occur in front of that prefrontal cortex. And it's not fully developed until age 25 or 26. Some people, 45, 46, depending, right? But it's not fully developed, so that brain is not being completely developed, and you see a lot of impulsivity struggling with those young people. Think about the teenage pressures that are happening with our young people. Increased school pressures and higher grades, possible first romantic relationship, increased independence and identity, trying to see how they fit in, where they fit in, starting to experiment sometimes with substance use, puberty, hormone fluctuation, and then unfortunately even bullying. So Klott, K-L-O-T-T, one of my favorite researchers on suicide, he simplifies it, but he talks about the concept that suicide never occurs outside of the context of a major social stressor. So, sir, if I were to ask you, what's the number one stress in your life right now? Number one stress? Yeah, what stresses you out? If you have no stress, we're going to meet. Parenting. Yeah, parenting. Yeah, taking care of children, right?
Working and parenting.
Working and parenting. So I get the chance to literally travel the world doing these presentations. Interesting enough, the top 3 stressors for adults: finances, relationship with children, and health. Those are the top 3. What do you think the number 1 is for young people? What do you think the number 1 is for young people? What do you think? Number 1 issue, number 1 stressor. Relationships. Okay, very good. School. Very good. Social image. Now, the young people will check, don't flatten my tires or don't crack my windshield out there. So young people, number 1 stressor, social image. Have you ever heard of vamping? What does vamping mean? Kids stay up all night answering their phone, right? Think of vampire. Vamping is when young people stay up all night checking their phone, looking at text messages, looking at the information, instead of getting the 8 hours of sleep they should get. Now, if I were to ask the young people to raise their hands, how many of them stay up at night watching their phone? I'm not going to do it because I don't want to get you grounded. But I would lay odds, a lot of these young people do. Can I tell you, it is as common as anything else these young people do. They stay up all night, checking the messages, talking to friends, or whatever. And can I tell you, it's one of the worst things that we can allow our children to do. It takes them away from their sleep, but it also puts them at risk. Because now I'm texting a friend who may be suicidal, I may be worried about a peer or something that way. So, if you look at this, Social media is really, the internet is really made up of what? I mean, there's great research sites, and I see some professors and other people here that I got to see in their class at BYU many years ago. So the internet is really made up of social, right? About 91% of the internet is social media. How many of you, what percentage of young people, if they see it on the internet, they believe it's true? What percentage do you think?
100%.
About 84%. The same study looked at the percentage of what is actual. What percent do you think is actual? 14%. 14%. How many of you seen Jumanji? Yeah. What does the girl do at the very beginning of the show? She's laying there and she has all these lights like that. She takes this picture and she looks at it and she goes, oh, and she changes it like 4 times. And then the gentleman finally goes, what are you doing? She goes, well, this is my wake-up picture. So I gotta look perfect. And then we're comparing ourselves constantly with everybody else. Aloneness, isolation. I did an article, Forever Strong, that was in the Sunday newspaper that talked about connectedness. So many of the suicides, unfortunately, I've been involved in. About 20% of young people leave notes. And it's been amazing to me as I read these notes. It's not punishment against their parents. The highest percentage of the notes said, Mom, Dad, don't blame yourself. I'm sorry for what's happening. I just couldn't take the pain anymore. But I feel so alone, and I feel like no one understands me. Can I tell you, I hear that all the time. Substance-related disorders for self-management. Young adults with undetected, undiagnosed, untreated emerging mental illnesses will turn to drugs. Most mental illnesses begin between the ages 10 to 14. If you have a child who's struggling with substance abuse, don't punish them. Get them help. Work with Utah County Drug and Alcohol Program. Get them to the expert. Victims of bullying, 8 to 12% of young people who take their lives are kids that have been bullied. The more severe the bullying, the higher the rates of depression. The higher the rates of depression, the higher the risk of suicide. Acculturation issue, can I tell you, this is a big thing for us, not only in Utah, but across the world. LGBTQ kids are the ones that get bullied the most. They're also the ones that are, in some situations, they experience that message of rejection from their family. Think of Maslow. Maslow says families provide food, clothing, safety, and shelter. You take that away. I had a mother stand in front of me, pointed her finger at her 15-year-old daughter and said, if you come out, your father and I will disown you. Do you understand that? So they get rejected from their primary support system, and then they go out into the community, and by far these are the kids that are bullied the most. So they get rejected by their peers. This is one that probably frightens me the most, the academic performance anxiety. Adolescents who believe that affirmation and love are won and earned are the most vulnerable. There's no psychological capacity. So they struggle they don't have the ability to manage failure. This is what we're seeing in high-performing schools, just like here at Mountain View. And parents, can I tell you, we are failing our children because we have unrealistic expectations. And the second part of that, you and I have grown up in a generation where we suffered for whatever reason, and we don't want our children to suffer the same pain. So we fix it so that they're not embarrassed. We fix it so that they don't fail. But we're denying them the chance to build resiliency, because that's what made you and I strong. And when we take that ability away from our child, then they don't know how to fail. If I can tell you one thing, moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, let your children fail. Be there for them to pick up the pieces, be there to support them, but to let them fail. Quit trying to fix it. You know, as a high school principal, the worst day of any year, of any days during the year, parent-teacher conference. Parent-teacher conference. Across the nation, 80% of parents come to elementary parent-teacher conference. Good, bad, doesn't matter how the child's doing. You get to middle school, it drops down to about 38%. And then in high school, we're lucky to get 20%. And who are the parents that count? What do you mean my son has a 97 in your class? 97, he's going to Harvard. This is your fault, right? where 97 is still in 8th grade. Can I tell you, we have to allow our children to fail. Now, I'm an educator. It doesn't mean I want them to get F's or D's, but every child is unique and every child is different. So what are the problems that increase suicide risk? Prior suicide attempt, especially if they've never been seen by a professional. Invariably, I'll have one of you parents visit with me afterwards and say, I think my child may have attempted, but I think everything's okay. No, they're not. They need to be seen by a professional. Visit with family support and treatment, Wasatch Mental Health. We have great resources outside. Please visit with them, because whatever triggered it the first time may come back and trigger it again if they don't get the help. Mental health disorders we've talked about, history of trauma or abuse, family history of suicide, or lack of social support. So what are the protective factors? The number one protective factor for families right now is to have one meal a day with your family. No phones, no television, nothing connected but each other. It could be breakfast, it could be lunch, it could be dinner. It doesn't matter. But have at least one meal with your family. Ask them questions and let them ask you questions. Let them feel connected. One meal a day. Contact with a caring adult. It may be a coach, it may be a neighbor, it may be a member of your church, but contact with a caring adult on a weekly basis. And then positive self-esteem and coping skills, and then access to mental health services, which, by the way, we have some of the best in the state right here in Utah Valley. So what are the warning signs? I'm going to quickly go through these because I know Bill is ready to come up and I want to make sure I get done. Recent loss of a loved one, survivor of a previous suicide attempt, loss of prestige, serious illness, family history of suicide, especially if it's a grandmother, grandfather, mom or dad, sibling, you're 50% more likely to attempt than someone else, or a close friend dies by suicide. And you knew, especially if you're a young person and you knew about it and didn't do anything, that now raises the level. So what's the behaviors? Talking or writing about suicide or death. Giving away prized possessions, we talked about. Could be clothing, music, something of value to that individual. Not participating in regular activities, they start to pull away. Changes in behavior, falling grades, ending close relationships. Is that it, Kath? I'm clicking. Oh, so it's important to remember, most individuals do not want to die. They want the pain to go away. It's hard for us to comprehend that. But someone who is struggling with a mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar, some sort of depression, they see things much different than you and I do. Much, much different. So what do? Take it seriously. Almost 80% of the time before someone dies has given some warning sign. It could be a comment, it could be something that they do. Don't be afraid to ask. And I always start out by saying, have you thought of hurting yourself? Have you thought of suicide? Don't ever be afraid to ask that. Talk frankly. Worst thing for a person contemplating suicide is the feeling that no one even notices them, no one understands what they're going through, or no one cares. Very, very important. And then listen attentively. Let the person talk as much as he or she wants. Be supportive and try to understand the suicidal feelings. So I'm going to role play real quick. I'm going to grab a stool. Hope's quiet. Come on, son. So I'm going to role play and then I'm done. Kathy, I'm going to be done as soon as. Tell me your name. Don. Don? John. Yeah. How come I always get people taller than me? I never notice that. I know, but he was sitting down. So John is my son. He gets his height from his mother's side. So I've been worried about John. Girlfriend broke up. He's a star on the basketball team. They lost the state championship. And I just noticed, tonight at dinner time, his sister asked him to pass the salt, and he just goes nuts. So, he's just yelling and screaming, gets up and walks away. So in a private moment, when I've calmed down, and I'm finally thinking that he's calmed down, I'm going to pull him aside. We may go for a walk. We may go out for ice cream. But between my wife and I, we're going to figure out which one can handle it the best with him at this moment. And tonight happened to be my night. So the conversation's going to go something like this. John, how you doing?
I'm okay.
I'm really worried, son. I noticed tonight that's not your usual behavior. And, I know you and Betty Sue broke up, or whatever her name was, that you were so serious about. And I know it was a big thing. You've been going for 2 weeks. But I know you have to joke about suicide, otherwise you get too depressed. But John, one of the things I'm worried about is, I went to this training, and one of the things I learned is that sometimes when someone goes through what you're going through, they think about hurting themselves. And I'm wondering if you're thinking about hurting yourself.
Well, yeah, a little bit. I've had some thoughts like no one understands me and stuff.
No, and I'm sorry for that. I know I'm so busy and not around as much as I used to be. One of the things I learned is sometimes it helps to talk to someone. And hey, I'm a teacher. I'm not a counselor. But I'm wondering if maybe we could contact Wasatch Mental Health and maybe visit with someone. Would you be willing to do that? No?
Too scary.
Too scary? Is there someone else that you'd be willing to talk to? Who do you trust? What adult do you trust?
I only trust my ex-girlfriend, Betty Sue.
John is out of the will right now. Thanks, John. But can I tell you, I would encourage you to do that. Find a moment with your child if you're worried about them. Don't be afraid to ask. The second part of it is, don't be afraid to share your true feelings. I noticed, and I like to use the I message. Honey, I noticed tonight this happened. Or I've been worried about you. Your mom and I have been worried about you. And I'm wondering if you're willing to talk to someone, all right? I'm out of time, so I'll be around afterwards. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Hudnall. Okay, our final presenter tonight and our speaker is Mr. Bill Holterstrup. Bill has been helping individuals and families improve their communities throughout North America and overseas for more than 30 years. He began his career at the Utah Special Olympics, where he served as project director, and then soon accepted a position at the United Way of Utah County, where he is now president and CEO. He's distinguished himself as a recognized leader and trainer in areas of volunteering, board governance, nonprofit leadership, and community building in over the past 30 years, conducted hundreds of workshops, and trained and consulted with thousands of individuals over 30 states and in Canada and Ghana. There's 3 more paragraphs, but it just says how amazing he is. Please welcome my friend Bill Holterstrup. Thank you.
Do we have a PowerPoint coming up here? Or?
Gotta use a Mac.
We don't. Puppets or It's coming, they told me. Let me just give you a little introduction about what we're talking about here, and we'll show some slides that go with that. I'm with United Way, and we try to tackle the issues that are bigger than one agency in one program, and discovered from various sources that this issue of anxiety and depression by young people is a growing issue. The issue is an issue that is changing faster than we can imagine. And I want to show you, if you can see these very beautiful slides up here. We actually did test this earlier. Boy, Greg, you're right, that light is bright. I'm really just kind of like, I'm just trying to see if let me just start telling you some of the data, and we'll see what happens from there. The data is showing some clear issues around anxiety and depression and how that is changing our community. And many people are saying, gee, is the problem worse than it used to be? Dr. Hudnall here, who we've worked together for literally decades, gave you some really good focus on the end of the continuum where things get pretty scary. I'm going to back this up just a little bit to talk about the broader group of young people who have depression and anxiety and they're struggling with that. The first thing that I want to show you is that the issue is increasing. It's not just an anecdotal change. There's a question that's being asked. I'm trying to get, do we have any sign? Am I going to have a PowerPoint or?
A little better.
Was there something there? Yeah, okay, here we go. Then now let's give you when asked, this is a question that's been asked in the schools, asking our school children the question that during the past 12 months, did you ever feel so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more? We're coming up with a very simple definition that would make you think there's a good chance of depression or anxiety here. From 2011 to 2017, do you see what a remarkably steep increase that is? My point is, this problem is getting worse, not better. It's not even flat. It is worse than when we were kids for us parents. The data shows that it is worse than it used to be. So is this the trick here, Greg, is to, right, point at the lady in the very back there. There we go, I went too fast on it. There we go. We also asked the community whether this is an important issue, and I think you're not surprised. The community says this is a very important issue. What I want to talk today is a program that we're calling Everyday Strong, and I'm proud to say that Hope4Utah is one of our partners that we're working together trying to work towards this issue. And it's based on a very simple fundamental concept. Many of you may recall this looks very similar to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs that Dr. Hudnall just alluded to. And this whole concept here is designed to realize that we're about physical needs. And one of my professional peers would remind us that so often when a child is struggling or a young person, the reality is that they're hungry or tired. Any of us parents who remember when our kids were little, something that does not change through an entire generation of life is if you're hungry or tired, you become ornery. Life is miserable. This does not change. Beyond that principle stuff, you're trying to evaluate any child or young person's needs, is the next 4 steps here of safety, connection, and confidence. We often focus on people being safe, being connected, being confident, and some may say competent. And so we will focus on being, and so of course we drive our kids to school, help them be safe, etc. The missing word here is feeling. So the focus here has to be on helping every child feel safe, feel connected, and feel confident. Often we focus on the being instead of the feeling. And as the research has shown on some of these issues, you're trying to figure out how can somebody not feel competent or confident when they're such overachievers. They don't feel confident. So focusing and teaching and helping children feel safe, feel connected, and feeling competent. We're saying that being safe, connected, and confident is how we create resiliency among our young people. There's all sorts of research. I'm going to be very quick on this. You can read through this quickly, but if you just pull the words from lots of important people, in this case, the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatrists, we're pulling out some key words here of confidence, competence, and deep-sitting connectedness. Safety and security is what they're saying, and we're just putting in this very simple framework is for parents and all caring adults and friends to keep going through the idea of do people feel safe, do they feel connected, and do they feel confident? Under the safety, I want to go what safety means here. It's safe to talk. In fact, parents, one of the suggestions that Dr. Matt Swenson, our lead chair of this committee, talks about is parents learning duct tape parenting. Anybody ever heard of duct tape parenting? It's asking your kids a question, then putting a piece of duct tape over your mouth so the children can say anything and everything they want to say. Practicing duct tape parenting is one of the ideas of how a child is safe to talk. Dr. Hudnall alluded to the fact of it being safe to fail, then ultimately being safe to feel. Then a child feels safe is critical. We often focus safety on the physical safety and miss these aspects of safety. Connection. How do you do involved in connection? You connect by asking. Parents, adults, friends. You connect by apologizing. And you connect through playing. Connections does take time. Connections is not just a simple transactional relationship. It's a need for a child to feel connected. Interestingly enough, we talk a lot about this idea of the cell phones and all of those things, etc. In many cases, some would tell you that these are just children trying to find a way to connect. And we want to give them better ways to connect. Confidence. You build confidence by naming the problem. You build confidence by trusting. Next time your child is struggling in school, sports, or the arts, instead of lecturing them or constantly reminding them of the need to improve, express trust in their abilities to be okay and to figure it out. And build confidence by remembering. A couple points, and looks like we got a messed up slide here, but the whole point here is, who in the last 30 days did you talk? Who in the last 30 days did you talk about feeling very sad or hopeless? 46% of our children said they had no one to talk to. A parallel question here is asked is about low neighborhood attachment. Neighborhood attachment is the whole idea of feeling connected to other adults, to neighbors, to community. The number of children, number of youth who do not feel a neighborhood of attachment is actually growing at a pretty steep clip. Back to this idea, remember the word, we're calling this everyday strong. And everyday strong is designed with the idea that everybody can do something. One thing that we can everybody do is help the children in our neighborhood feel more connected. And the first thing you do about it is learning children's names. But feeling connected, helping everybody feel connected. This is not just a parent's responsibility. As Dr. Hudnall, this is a community responsibility. Another premise that Dr. Matt Swenson reminds us of constantly is, as we try to deal with these issues, is the constant belief that children fundamentally want to be good. Children do not wake up with the idea of saying, how can I make my parents' lives miserable? It may feel that way at times, but that's not what children do. So understand this belief, that there's a lot of laughter on this one here, that children want to be good. We're kind of moving this whole idea and moving away from a child won't do something to understand a child can't. Changing our framework around the idea that when a child is struggling with something, instead of having a child feel frustration and guilt, we want to strengthen and support them. Go back to the top. Instead of being judgmental, let's help them be curious. Instead of assuming that that child is willful and defiant, can we assume as an adult that that child has too many stressors or has a skill that needs to be learned? Instead of thinking this child is lazy and just wants to get attention, try to say, what is the barrier from that child succeeding? Instead of focusing just on the traditional rewards and punishments, and many will say the natural consequences, focusing on how do we remove the barriers? How do we help children succeed? Let me give you a typical problem here. May is a fourth grader who's been showing low frustration, tolerance, and even some aggression repeatedly over the past several weeks, including throwing a volleyball at the peer's face and a pen across the room of the classroom at her teacher. So if you think about that, remember the triangle we just showed you there, the hierarchy? So is that a physical problem? Could that child be hungry or tired? Could that problem have sensitivity issues that we haven't dealt with? Does the child feel safe? Did this child feel threatened or unsafe? Are adults unsafe to this child? Is she with safe adults? Does this child feel connected? Is there problems with relationships at school or at home? Confident? Is there a learning issue that's dealing with? Trying to disciple and trying to go through these various challenges and saying, going up that pyramid, is it physical, is it safety, is it connected, is it confidence? We think it's a church for everybody. Let me come back and take one step back here. Our whole thinking on our design of this, in partnership with so many, is that we're describing this as what every child needs. Everyone needs to feel safe, connected, and confident, not just children that are struggling. So part of our strategy here is instead of trying to stigmatize certain children, saying, oh, you're an at-risk child, let me focus on just that. If we focus on all of our children, we help them feel safe, connected, and confident. So here's another one. Julia is 17 years old and behavior is increasingly difficult. She refuses to follow the rules, isn't attending church, and her dress seems to be inappropriate. Nowadays are getting tough. What is our traditional response to? How many people think that number one, taking away your phone, is the right answer? I have a few hands up. How many people say number two is the right answer? How many people think that number three is the right answer? And number four? In most cases, number three is the one that we probably would want to focus on. There's some interesting research about taking away the phone and using that as a strategy alone can actually be a bit problematic. Helping children how to use the phone is a different story. A lot of our traditional responses to behaviors may not be right in trying to help children who are struggling. So our goal is to help children be safe, connected, and confident. We're going to try to just be aware, kind of give you a quick little headline. We're going to start trying to have all sorts of social media and information and materials that families and parents can go through to help children through this whole journey of safety, connections, confidence. If any of you happen to see the Daily Herald last Sunday, every other Sunday there'll be a column. In fact, this last column, Dr. Hudnall was our premier article. What a great article, if you want to Google that, about how to help children be connected. And so every other week there'll be a story on that. So our goal is to have every child feel secure at home and school, that they know how to talk to their parents, and that the situation is reliable and safe. We want to help everyone feel connected. And this connected piece is one that you've heard a lot of discussion in the earlier presentation of, this need to feel connected. And the last one that we want to remind everybody is children need to feel confident. And parents and all adults have to have a realistic idea of achievement. The vision we have for our kids is empowering and not crippling. I might add this realistic achievement issue is an issue that we have to start with very young in life and move forward. Here's 3 things that we can do. Learn more about Everyday Strong. There's a website that you can go to, everydaystrong.org. If you need immediate resources, you've got a whole list of resources that you heard out there. You can also just dial the 3-digit number 211 and have a trained expert tell you the resources in the community. 211, trained resources, and you can help talk about this. On 211, you can also download an app called 211 Utah, which has the resources of every nonprofit that we know of in the state dealing with these various mental health issues. And you can search on that and pass that information on to everyone else. So thank you for letting me present to you. My final statement is, as this is a community issue, this affects everybody, thus the term Everyday Strong, and we encourage everybody every day to do something to strengthen the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. A lot of amazing information that we had, and before we go to our next bit, we have a panel for those who want to stick around and ask some questions to some amazing, very smart people. I want to turn just a few minutes over to our mayor, Mayor Brunst, to come up and say a few words. Give it up to the mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I just want to let you know that as the mayor of Orem, and with our police chief and our fire chief here as well, we truly support what's going on here. We love what Hope4Orem is doing and Strong Everyday is doing. And I think it's important that we are here to, as a community, to work together. I would like to say, and I would like to proclaim today, the 4th of April, 2018, as the Hope4Orem Day in Orem. So I'm making this a public proclamation. And I will fill that out, and I will pass that on. So we love what's going on here. You know, a few years ago, I was involved with someone who wanted to commit suicide. This particular person had been abused, did not know how to deal with the family abuse going on, and tried to take their life 4 times. 4 times I ended up in a different hospital with this person trying to hang on to him. One time it was 40 Advil pills. One time it was cutting wrists and some other things going on. Each time they were very close. But interestingly, each time when I went to visit with them, I could see who they were. I could see the light in their eyes. I could see that they were a person that had great potential. And I kept trying to tell them that if we could get them the help, they had great potential for the future. They were hurting inside. They were trying to hurt themselves. And what they needed to do was to be healed. And so we found them professional help to be healed. We tried it once and it didn't work. We tried it a second time and it took. And this person now has finished their college education. They're a professional in the medical field. They're married with a family, and they're doing a lot of good in the community. And really, the people that are hurting, that are trying to commit suicide, hurt inside, and we we are the ones that need to help them and to help them find ways to heal. So I hope that each one of us would consider that as we look at them, we may be the only one who's really noticing, and that we take action. We don't stop, but we take action. Lastly, the last thing I'd like to mention is, parents, spend time with your child every day just listening to them. Sit them down for a minute, give them a piece of bread, some jam, whatever, and just listen to them. And that means more than anything. And lastly, believe in them. Believe in our youth. We have great youth in our city. We have great youth in our community. And I'm proud to be a supporter of this cause. Thank you very much.
Like prison? Get some bread and jam and some Pop-Tarts and some Hot Pockets as well. And if I can just end before we bring our panel up. By the way, when we have the panel come up, we have some amazing groups in the booths out there. You are free to leave to go talk with them, get some information, get some help, some resources if you like to. If you want to stick around and ask some people some questions, please stick around. Because I think we get a lot more knowledge out of that. What did we learn tonight, though? What did we hear? What are some of these reasons, right? We hear about teens and kids being super depressed, anxiety rates through the roof, isolation, disconnectedness, right? For the last 4 months, I have talked to or received hundreds of messages. Quiet, Harley. That's my emotional support dog, which I need right now. For the last 4 months, I have personally received or talked to hundreds of parents and teenagers, but specifically teenage kids. And I asked them, what are they struggling with? And they say these things. They say isolation, they say anxiety, they say depression, they say the pressure of being perfect. And when I sit down and talk to them, and I ask them, tell me about your parents. Why do you feel this way? And the most eye-opening thing I have seen, and I want you to take home if you are a parent, is how many of these kids have told me and said to me in tears that the reason why I feel this pressure, this anxiety, this depression is because my parents are stuck on their phones all day. I had a 14-year-old girl tell me that she was suicidal, and she said, the only time I've felt like my mom loves me is when she posts one of my accomplishments on Facebook. I just wish one day she'd come home and ask me, how was your day? That's all I want. So I feel that if we want to make the change with our kids, we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at what are we letting these things do to us? Our kids, are they just modeling us? Are they modeling our own issues, our own addictions, to our own social media, to our own phones, to our own problems? These kids are screaming every day, messages hundreds of times I get, screaming for attention, for connection. We've given them these devices that have made them, we do it because we want them to be more connected to their friends, but it's only created more isolation. We talk about they can't cope. Why can't they cope with just the most basic struggles? Because they don't know how to cope. Because they've depended on these artificial worlds and devices and likes and comments. They depend on that for all of their validation, for all of their self-love. All of their worth is dependent on what a stranger thinks, or swipes, or likes, or shares, or comments. So when you go home and you have your bread and jam with your kids, talk to them and focus and think about what is it that you're doing that they might be modeling. Because it is so eye-opening when I talk to kids, they say that. But anyways, so thank you for coming. Sorry to end on a bummer. I feel like I should sing or dance or something. Give it up for the dogs in the back. Yes, we brought dogs for you. So thank you so much for coming. As they said, it takes a community. It's so amazing to see a community. We have to work together. If you want to stick around, we have a panel coming up. So if all the panel members, you know who you are, would you mind coming up? We have a few mics that we're going to pass around to the audience. We have some Hope Squatters that are going to throw the mics to people. Come on up, Hope Squatters. Come on up here, yes. I'm going to introduce the panelists as they come up, or I'm going to actually pass the mic. We're going to grab some chairs. You can sit on it. Go ahead and sit on the. You can just sit on the thing right here. And we also have a lot of refreshments out there, tons. So, all right, come on up, people. We have a few microphones. Our Hope Squatters are going to run them around if you have questions. I'm going to start the mic right here, and I'm going to pass it down. Please, very quickly, who you are and what you do, and let's get through this fast. Go ahead.
I'm Julie Borreo-Goetz. I'm a representative of St. Francis of Assisi Catholic Church, but I am also the mother of an LGBTQ son who has, in his terms, had suicide ideation, attempted it twice, was unsuccessful, has been treated.
Mayor Richard Brunst of Orem.
My name is Missy Larson. I am the founding chair of SafeUT. Do all of you know what Safe? An app that you download on either Google or your Mac, and that will get you directly to therapists by just texting or calling at the University of Utah Neuropsychiatric Institute. They are trained therapists, and 24/7, all day long, all night long, reach out. If there's any crisis, it goes directly to UNI. That is a state-funded program and a technology that is being going through all of the schools, so the students know about it, but some of the parents don't.
I'm
now at doTERRA, so doTERRA is awesome, and as you can see, Janice has gotten this whole thing going.
I'm Hans Magali, one of the co-presidents of the Mountain View High School Hope Squad.
I'm Inaugural. I'm also a co-president of Mountain View's Hope Squad.
I'm Roger Smith, one of the counselors here at Mountain View. I'm Sam Stedman. I am an assistant Hope Squad advisor at Mountain View. I teach